All right, I got a question for you. So, if you stop a car because you have reasonable suspicion that the driver is suspended, you get up to the car, you realize that the driver is not the registered owner, so it's actually just a friend, and you no longer have reasonable suspicion for the registered owner. Can you at least ask for the person's driver's license? Can you demand it? That's what we're going to answer today. My name is Anthony Bandiero. I am joined by my good friend Sean Thompson. How are you, my friend?
Great, doing great.
Now, tell people just real quick who you are and where you work and so forth.
Sean Thompson, I work for the Scott County Sheriff's Office out of Iowa. I am the captain and chief deputy of the patrol operations and a proud certified search and seizure instructor through Blue to Gold.
That's right. So you better know your stuff. This is the test. Okay. So look, we have a case called Kansas versus Glover, right? And or is it Glover versus? I think it's Kansas versus Glover. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's where the U. So what happened in there briefly is that a patrol deputy he ran Glover's car, his license plate. He saw that the registered owner came back with a suspended license, revoked, whatever it was. He wasn't allowed to drive. He did not know for sure, right, that the driver was Glover. It could have been a friend. It was, presumed at night or whatever. He pulled it over. He was actually correct. It was Glover. He gets charged accordingly. Glover then takes his case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And what is his argument? His argument is that you never had reasonable suspicion to even stop my vehicle because you should presume the opposite. You should not presume that I'm driving because I'm not supposed to drive. So why don't you presume that I'm actually following the law and that somebody else is driving and they may have a license? The U.S. Supreme Court said that is actually presuming that the driver is the RO is actually a reasonable inference. They use statistics saying that 70% of people who get their license suspended or revoked actually continue to drive. Therefore, presuming that the driver was actually RO was Glover. Okay, why is that important for today? Because we have a couple cases. We have Dunlap and we have Coleman. Sean, this is you're on deck now. Did you have anything to correct on my Glover thing?
So far, so good.
Okay, so let's talk about let's first talk about I want to talk about Dunlap. Okay, Dunlap is a case from where? Ohio, I believe, right?
Yes, Ohio.
Okay, what can you give us a Reader's Digest version of that case?
Basically, a police officer had reasonable suspicion to believe that the individual driving the car was a suspended driver, but when he got up to the window, realized it was not that driver, but
Okay,
then asked for that person's driver's license.
so that issue was not dealt directly in Glover because they didn't have to do that, right? They didn't. He knew it was Glover. He saw the guy's probably picture on the MDT, and boom. So this makes this a little different than Glover. So the initial stop is good, but the question for the court is, hey, can we even ask that guy for his credentials? Is that kind of essential what the legal issue is in that case?
Absolutely, and they even reference Rodriguez in this case.
Oh, unlawfully
Mentions
extend the traffic stop.
correct.
So in Dunlap, did the officer unlawfully extend the traffic stop?
No, the Ohio Supreme Court said no, based on the fact that he asked and did not demand.
Okay. And do you see that as legally significant? In other words, if the person asks and hands it over and or they say they're asked for their license and they don't have one, boom, that's a violation. Or they hand it, the officer runs it, comes back suspended. But what happens if the driver says, you know what, I don't want to give it. You told me you pulled me over because you thought I was somebody else. I'm not that person. I want to leave. What should the officer do there?
I believe the officers should let him go.
Right, because
I,
there's no reasonable suspicion.
there's no reasonable suspicion. It's been dispelled once you pull that car over and you realize it's not the person that you thought it was.
Hmm.
You have no probable cause at that point to pull the car over
Right, or reasonable suspicion to keep them
or
detained.
reasonable suspicion. Yeah,
Okay, now that's not the same outcome in Coleman.
no.
What
My
happened in
wonderful
Coleman?
state of Iowa.
Oh, so you guys made bad case law again. Are you trying to compete with Arizona?
We're it feels like we're getting to that point.
I think you are. I think that you are working very hard to outpace Arizona in their bad case law. And one of my instructors is John Ween, and he's amazing. I will tell you, he's amazing. But I was very suspect that I should even hire this guy because he's from Arizona. He probably contributed to the problem. But regardless, he's passed. He passed his probation. So what happens in Coleman?
So in Coleman, the officer runs a registration plate and sees the fact that individual has a suspended driver's license. When the officer gets to the driver's window, realizes that is not the person that they ran.
Different sex, I think, too, right? The RO is a
Different,
female. This was a male, so pretty clear.
yes, yeah, pretty clear. Or they were Caucasian, and the driver was, in this case, was black.
Hmm. Something like that. Yeah, yeah. I think they
Something like
mentioned that.
that.
Yep, yep.
So then he goes ahead and asks the driver in a way that would be like demanding, "Hey, well, let me see your driver's license."
Hmm.
Runs
Yeah.
it, goes back to the car, finds out he's barred, which in Iowa is an aggravated misdemeanor. So he ends
So
up
that
going to
people are
jail.
really mad then.
Yes, correct.
Mm, yeah.
And then the Iowa Supreme Court overturned that, stating that you had no probable cause to get his driver's license to run it, and the conviction was overturned.
So look, it sounds. I mean, look. I mean, you did say that in Coleman, the officer, kind of demanded it. But do you actually think? I've read this Coleman case. Do you think that officers in Iowa should still be cautious even about asking for a driver's license at this point?
I do. The way the courts have ruled here in Iowa, if you pull this person over just for the fact that the registration said that they're a suspended driver, and you find out that that is not the person in question, you should just let them go.
Well, I'll read you a couple quotes here, and I think that now the first thing is we're talking about this because this is a split, but there's a few silver linings here, I think, for our audience that are not in Iowa, and we're going to tell them. We're going to say, hey, this is what I think the law is, at least under the Fourth Amendment. Um, you know, but the court, did talk about how, no, you have the Fourth Amendment. You also have the Iowa State Constitution. It
Right.
is true that even though when you think about Iowa, you think about cornfields and freedom, but they do get a little corrupted politically because they're so damn close to Illinois and some of their, bad, doctrines up in Illinois seem to bleed over into the great state of Iowa. And I say that because, again, when I think about Iowa, I think about Idaho, right? I mean, they sound the same. They seem kind of similar in their states, but they're not. Iowa is actually has some case law that actually has been a little bit more restrictive on our police officers and versus Idaho, right, where they kind of really conform to the Fourth Amendment, and they kind of lean on the side of public safety and crime control, not necessarily trample on freedom. We don't want that either. We want freedom and crime control, but they say things like, look, um, they said the case law repeatedly emphasizes that even a de minimis extension of traffic stops are not acceptable. Well, okay, you got to be careful with that. They're talking about Rodriguez here, and de minimis is Latin for minimal. That kind of makes sense. We can figure that one out, and it means that even a few second over detention is unlawful. I don't think the Supreme Court ever meant that. Not in the context of just if I pull you over, Sean, or you actually vice versa. I'm not a cop anymore. You pull me over, and you ask me, and I got kids in the back, right? And you said, hey, and they play Little League because they have their outfits on, and you ask my kids, how do you like Little League and how's your team doing? Is that unrelated to the stop?
It is unrelated,
Um,
but
is
it
that,
should be done.
yeah, because now the courts will uphold it regardless under
Right.
de-escalation and rapport building, but or let's say you just ask me, something, totally, unrelated, like, hey, why'd you buy this Corvette in yellow, right? What is this your favorite color? This has nothing to do with the stop. It's not going to help you, investigate why I'm not wearing my seatbelt or and so forth. Maybe speeding, maybe the color of the car has something to do with speeding. But the point is, it's de minimis, okay? And courts have loosened. I've initially when Rodriguez came out in 2015, they were very strict, like no extensions whatsoever. And then the Supreme Court didn't really mean like that. They meant really with these dog sniffs, right? Now courts are allowing a little bit more freedom for cops to just do stuff that human beings do, like talk about why'd you buy yellow versus red Corvettes and so forth. And so your court is saying this, that there's no extension whatsoever. I think they're being a little harsh, but they also said we are also even if they thought that they got Rodriguez wrong, they're saying this. Even we of course are not obliged to follow Rodriguez in our own interpretation of Article 1, Section 8 of the Iowa Constitution. In any event, they think that even, that if other states like Ohio is allowing this, they're saying that under our own state constitution, we cannot allow any extension if it's unless it's based on reasonable suspicion. They
Correct.
said and so forth. Now, the conclusion here in Coleman from Iowa was we conclude that when the reason for a traffic stop is resolved and there is no other basis for reasonable suspicion, Article 1, Section 8 of the Iowa Constitution requires that the driver must be allowed to go on his or her way without further ado. Okay. I think it's important for our readers to understand that this is you cannot say or teach that Coleman is based on the Fourth Amendment. At the end of the day, they don't really hold that. They're not sure. They even say they're not sure, but under their own Iowa Constitution. So let me ask you this: as an Iowa officer, what if I go up to that car in Iowa and I say, "Oh, hey, I pulled you over. It's at night. I couldn't see you. The register owner is a male and he does not have a driver's license. You're a female. You're not the person I'm looking for. You are free to go. Okay, have a good day. But before you go, can I see your license just to make sure you have one? What do you think about that scenario? Are officers playing with fire, or would you think that would be lawful in Iowa?
Well, under what I know now about the Fourth Amendment and everything you've taught me, I say that's good to go.
As long as they feel free to leave, right?
Correct, as long as they feel free to leave. And it's not up to me to make them understand if they're free to leave. So I think that making sure that they understand that, hey, you can leave if you'd like to, but before you go, any chance I could look at your driver's license?
Yep.
It's just on the way you word it. If
I
you
think
word it
so,
that
right?
way, I,
Yeah.
I, I think you'd be okay. But you are flirting with fire a little bit because of the way the
Yeah.
Iowa Supreme Court has ruled.
And there is a strong dissent in this opinion, so it's not like it was unanimous. But
Right.
I would say, especially in Iowa, you got to make it crystal clear that there is no longer detention there. We call this the Trooper Two Step, right?
Right.
Which is, hey, I appreciate you. You have any? I like to do that. You have any questions, comments, or concerns before you leave? That's their time to get anything off their chest. Like cool. I appreciate your cooperation. You have a good day. Hey, can I ask you a question before you leave? And then that, as long as they don't, you don't, your hand is not on the car. Don't lean on a car because then they can't leave. If you're physically attached to the car, that'd be some kind of assault. They feel free to leave. I think, you have to articulate that a reasonable person would have felt free to decline your request and they would have felt free to leave. Then Iowa would have a tough time saying that that was some kind of a violation of Coleman. You agree?
I agree. I agree.
Okay. I will also tell you that even if you're in Ohio, right? If you're doing the whole, hey, you're not the person I was looking for. Can I see your license? Don't demand it. I don't think you have the right to demand a license. I really don't. A lot of cops will say, but Anthony, hold on. We have a statute that says that all drivers must, surrender their license upon demand. I say, but obviously you have to read all statutes in line with the. That's your turn.
Oh, with the Constitution.
That's right. And so you can't, just because the statute literally, if you read it literally, I guess you just walk up to people in parking lots and demand their license. But read it in context with the Constitution, with the Fourth Amendment. And a person, if the reasonable suspicion has been dispelled, right, and you no longer have reasonable suspicion on your foot, criminal
Yeah,
activity afoot,
look at that.
then you're going to have to, make them feel free to leave. And I think you should be clear about it. And if they say, I don't want to show you my license, fine. But oftentimes, Sean, when you ask them, okay, cool, you're not the person, you are free to go. Can I see your license before you leave? They'll say things like, oh, you know what? I don't have it on me. Is that PC for a violation?
Yeah, you walked right into the probable cause at that point because you required to have a license on you at all times when you drive a
When you
vehicle.
drive a vehicle.
Yep.
And they say, well, it's just, they'll say oftentimes, well, I think it's suspended or something like that, right? So if they do that, then that's PC. Then you just re-engage them and re-detain them and you work the traffic stop.
Correct.
Anything else you want to add about these two cases, which I think are interesting and our audience probably enjoys this too?
No, I really found it interesting that the way Ohio ruled and then the way Iowa has ruled. It's very very close, and I think it's a wordplay.
It is
That's what it
wordplay,
comes down
and
to.
it matters how the officer articulates it. It doesn't matter what your courts are doing. Ohio is a pretty good judicial system to be a cop in right now.
Yes,
They're competing with Texas. It seems like that's great. Iowa concerns me a little bit, but obviously, when you read what they're saying here, you know, I get the fabric. We just have to make sure that if we're going to work into this framework, I should say framework, we understand what they're trying to say here. Okay. Anything else to add
absolutely.
before we leave?
Nope, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the next webinar because I know you are you're almost a staple. When I do not see you on one of my webinars, I cry. Just so you know.
Oh, thank you
Yep.
so much.
You're welcome. All right, my friend. Until next time, everybody stay safe.
All right, take care.